You are listening to the Source Connection Podcast, an ongoing invitation to remember your true infinite nature and embody your unique human expression. By holding space for the kind of conversations that uplift, inform, and unite us, we are here to amplify the field of possibilities and explore the keys to creating the new. Hosted by Liz B. and Tara Long. For more, check out thesourceconnection.us, Spotify, Odyssey, and YouTube.
All right, welcome friends. Thank you so much for joining us again today. We have a very special guest that we are going to introduce after our tune-in. We're here with Tania Elfersy, and we can't wait to talk about what we're going to talk about today. You guys, we're coming in hot, 2023. But before we get there, let's go ahead and just take a minute to come home to ourselves together. So if you'd like to close your eyes, you can. That is the invitation. If you'd like to sit or lie down, you can do that. If you're in the car or driving or doing something else, just allow yourself the opportunity to slow down in whatever way that you can. Just feeling your nervous system relaxing. Just feeling yourself breathe. Feeling that breath moving in and out of the body. Feeling yourself settle. Coming back into your body. Gathering all of yourself. And bringing it right here, right now. Because we want and we need all of you. So giving yourself permission to show up just as you are without having to fix or change anything. Because there is nothing to fix. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong. And feeling that deep belly breath, if that's available to you right now. You can even put your hand on your abdomen, on your low belly, and feel it fill up, nourishing you, giving you everything you need in this moment. Reminding yourself that you have everything you need right here, right now. There is nothing that's missing. You are whole. Remembering this is a place that you always are and you can always remember. And it only takes 2 seconds, 1 second to remember this wholeness that you are, this perfection that you are. Giving yourself a reset and starting there, and then seeing what comes. But starting there from the truth, from your own wholeness. And thank you for being with us today. Thank you for taking these moments together. They really are so much more powerful than we can ever know with our minds. So giving yourself some gratitude today for doing that. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they were closed and just move the body and take what you need. So, thanks again, everyone, for being here. We're here with Tania today. And Tania reached out to us on a Telegram channel that Liz and I are over on, doing some mentor sessions and supporting the community there. And it's such a pleasure, such an honor. And Tania reached out to us and said, hey guys, I have this amazing book that I just wrote. It's called The Wiser Woman's Guide to Perimenopause and Menopause. And we're going to talk all about that today because this is a story that needs to be rewritten. But I want to just say a little bit about Tania before we start. She's a transformative coach, speaker, educator, so much more. A wife, a mother, originally born in London, lived in Paris in the 11th for a little while, and I lived in the 13th. So that's something that we could talk about. And one thing that I just want to say that is so our motto here at the Source Connection, and it so resonated, and I read it on your bio. You said, you're no longer surprised by the power of simple. And I just thought, it was so beautiful and so aligned with us. So Tania, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear if there's anything you'd like to add to that introduction. You can start with that and then just tell us how you got here to this moment with us today and you're just a little bit about your journey, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah. So I'm today 53. I mean, not today.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday! No.
But my journey into this area started 10 years ago when I was 43, and I had no idea. Wasn't thinking about perimenopause. Never heard of the word perimenopause. Certainly thought menopause was a decade away. Who had time to think about that? My kids were younger. I was just dealing with them, juggling being a mum of 3. And I had another book at the time that I was promoting about motherhood, etc., trying to get it all together. And I started to get symptoms. And it started with just feeling sick very often, just, having the odd fever. And then there was some hair loss. And then there were frequent migraines. And then there were skin problems. And then I realized, my moods were all over the place. And later I could track that as sort of 2 weeks of PMS every single month. And also night sweats. And I sort of ran between acupuncture to some herbal remedies to potions to creams, trying to sort out each symptom individually. And then I heard on a webinar, I heard Dr. Christian Northrup actually say, many women in their 40s feel like they have PMS on steroids. And I was like, PMS on steroids? That sounds like my life. What is that? And that was the first time I'd heard about perimenopause. And I immediately contacted all my 40-something friends and I was like, well, do you know the way, the change it doesn't happen instantly, which for some reason I thought it did. I just thought that's it. We get to a point, the periods stop and then we're in menopause. It takes a while and no one around me seemed to know anything about it. And lots of women were experiencing symptoms. And I thought that I had a good knowledge of women's health. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. And I started researching and trying to understand what could be creating the symptoms and obviously what could heal them for me. Feeling very much not like myself and just wanting to feel like myself again. And everywhere I looked, there was the hormone story. It's your hormones. And if you just fix your hormones, then you will be back. And if you just fix your hormones, all your symptoms will go away. And if you just fix your hormones, then there are all these other health benefits that you're going to enjoy. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense. Why would my body that had got me from birth to where I was then, and in my case, mother of 3 as well, 3 natural births, and it knew how to do all of that, but it didn't know how to get me through menopause. Like, why would that make any sense? And as I write in the book, there's only ever one reason that doctors, celebrities, media people, that they ever give. And that's because this is new territory and we never used to live this long. And that is total and utter nonsense.
Yes.
Women have always lived beyond menopause, and we can find references, as I offer them in the book, and I offer reference from the Bible, from the 2nd century, from the 12th century. And yes, women aren't often written in history, and women's life cycles weren't, a great interest to the people who were writing medical books. But where menopausal women were mentioned, they weren't mentioned as freaks of nature. And we know that average life cycle expectancy increases over the ages as child mortality, which was really horrific, decreases over the ages. And it's not because women used to get to 40 and then just drop dead. No. So we've always lived through menopause. So then what, I was like, well, what could it be? What's going on? If I think my body is brilliant, why would I be experiencing all these symptoms? And for me, I came across an understanding of the human experience known as the 3 principles that helped me understand how I was innocently creating a huge amount of stress in my life by taking my thinking seriously. And for me, that looked like the thought of I'm not enough floated through my head. And because it was in my head, I thought it was true. And I started taking it seriously. And then I used to feel bad. And then I used to feel bad that I'm not enough and I can't do what I'm supposed to be doing in my business. And I feel like overwhelmed in motherhood. And all this is going on. And no one else is telling me I'm not enough. But that was the feeling that I carried with me. And because I felt bad, then I thought, well, there must be things I need to do. And so I was busy, as well as going to all these treatments, writing in a journal or trying to meditate or trying to say affirmations and pretty much failing in all of that because I still didn't feel better. So then it made me feel even worse. And then going back to your introduction, I realized the simplicity of it all. And I realized, just because there's a thought in my head, I don't need to take it seriously. And life would probably be easy if I didn't. And when I really saw that, which came in an insight, it had a profound impact on me. And within days, all of my symptoms, emotional and physical, cleared up. And at the time, I had a feeling that, I've seen something. And I thought, I think I'm not going to have PMS, but all my symptoms cleared up. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. We'll see what happens. I don't know what's just happened. How is it I'm not having any symptoms? I feel really good. And with time, I got to understand, that's quite extraordinary. And I should be sharing what I've seen. And that was back in 2015. And so I set off on a journey quietly at first because I knew how crazy that would sound. What do you mean it's not your hormones? What do you mean you can have an insight and all your symptoms, disappear? But I started sharing it. And so since then, I've been helping women go through perimenopause and menopause in a very different way with a very much more lighter, empowered experience through this understanding of how we innocently create stress, but also really tuning into the brilliance of the woman's body and really understanding that our body loves us. Of course, it doesn't want us to suffer. Of course, there's wisdom behind even every single symptom and really helping women heal the symptoms themselves.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing that. And just to drill down, the 3 principles of innate health and the idea that mind, thought, and consciousness are creating the experience that we're having here. And so touching into that, the subtlety of that and seeing the results in your body and just all of it. Yeah, it can be hard for some folks to touch upon, but we're all about it. So let's explore that. And in your book, you talked about a couple of times where you're either given a talk or a post of yours was shared in a Facebook group and that stirred up a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to link that up with the cake story you tell in the book. So maybe we could tell folks the cake story because I thought it was a genius way, in a very neutral way of expressing this kind of play and how it goes. And you talked about how in those instances, a lot of stuff was brought up, and you would have the choice in every moment, how do I interact, right, with this feeling that's emerging, or this discomfort, or whatever that is, because not everybody was happy to hear or read what you had to say, because it was going head to head with a bunch of ideas and maybe preconceived notions that people just absorb and think that's what is true or right without really exploring them. So maybe you could go into the cake story briefly and talk about that, because I thought that was just so beautiful.
Okay. So before we get to the cake, there's this, we grow up with an idea that it's something out there that's making us feel bad. And so for me, it could be, how my business was going at the time. So, it's that makes me feel bad. And it's the same in the hormonal story. We sort of package this idea that there are these hormones that are running detached from universal intelligence. And those things are making me feel bad. And it's innocent, as I said, but it's like pushing a responsibility to the outside and saying, oh no, it's not anything that's going on within. Everything that I'm experiencing is because of these circumstances out there. And so I use an idea of a chocolate cake to show how this could play out. So if we put a chocolate cake in the center of a circle of 10 women, it's quite possible that each woman will have a different experience of the chocolate cake. And so it could go from, there's chocolate cake, yes or no, I'll have some. And that's a neutral experience. I have nothing on it. I'm not having any, great story attached to it. So that could be one woman having that experience. And then there'll be another woman who could possibly have the experience of, it's chocolate cake. I don't know. How many calories have I had today? Am I allowed chocolate cake? I don't know, etc. Then there could be someone else. I've had such a bad day. I deserve a piece of that chocolate cake. And it could be another one saying, I wonder what ingredients she puts in the chocolate cake, because if she doesn't use organic baking powder, there's going to be aluminium, and I don't want that. And there could be another woman who says, how much caffeine is in the cocoa and the chocolate cake? And if I eat that cake, I'm not going to be able to sleep. And so I give these examples to show that it's just a simple chocolate cake, and we could all be sitting around in a circle and having our own experience of the chocolate cake, a different experience, creating our own reality. And from those thoughts, if we begin to take them seriously, about, another one could say, why is she bringing out chocolate cake? Why isn't she serving fruit? Why is it, what does that create? That creates like this sense of constriction. Someone's attacking me, chocolate cake, the maker of the chocolate cake, and thus I'm having this experience. But I could also have a completely different experience of the chocolate cake, just like that, with new thinking that could come in that just says, hey, piece of chocolate cake. Sure, I'm up for it. I'll eat it and I'll love it, and where is our truth in that? And I point out in the book, so often we go after the bad feeling and then start analyzing, how much caffeine is in the chocolate cake, and what happens if I don't sleep, and what have I got tomorrow? And it comes with this flavor of feeling, but we get caught up in it, believing that's true. Whereas there's always a different experience to be had of everything, including chocolate cake. And it comes with a different flavor of feeling. And there, it's much more interesting to look for our truth there in the lightness. So bringing it back also to what you were saying about the different experiences that I've had, showing up, sharing my work in talks online, and challenging this dominant narrative that a lot of women like to hold on to, because then it's like, I can keep on blaming my hormones. It's not about me. It's those crazy things out there. So everyone can have a different experience of their hormones. So my experience of my hormones is they're part of my innate intelligence. Why would I want to hate on them? Why would I want to put them down? Why would I want to try and fix them? It's all part of what's going on in this brilliant body. And another woman is like, no, they're malfunctioning. They need to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
We have, it was just different experiences through our thinking. And so when I come along and I point to, perhaps we could drop the hormone story. Perhaps it's not what we've been told. Perhaps there's a more empowering, more loving way that we can journey through perimenopause and menopause without this sense that we need to fix ourselves. For many women, it feels like I've just pulled the rug from under their feet because they've been holding on to that hormone story, and I'm pointing in a different direction. But not all women. So there are women that get that sense of, oh, wow, and then they attack. And there are women who listen to what I'm saying. And for them, for whatever reason, it makes sense. And it's not about what I'm saying. Yeah. It's about their experience, their thinking of what I'm saying. And so often my work creates these, for some women, it will be neutral, but often like women are like, oh my God, I love what you're saying because so few people are talking like that. Whereas others are like, how dare you? You're dangerous. And of course we need to listen to this dominant narrative of the hormones. So, yeah.
I love that story about the cake. And we could really, anytime we're faced with something like that, we can learn so much about ourselves just by paying attention to how are we showing up with that? Like, oh, wow, we can learn so much, right? Like the woman who is scared about the caffeine versus the woman who's, looking at the ingredients, and like, it's so telling. And I'm wondering, Tania, you talk a lot about in the book about like, really it's just, let's start with slowing down, right? Okay. All these things are happening. You're having all these symptoms. So if we just slow down and listen, right, there could be a number of things or just one thing that comes up first. That's like, okay, let's start here. Let's look at this. So what do you find in the women that you're working with now? And before we get to that, I just want to invite our listeners, our beautiful women and maybe men who are listening right now, to ask yourself, if you are in this situation or in the position where you're like, oh, my hormones are doing this or that, like, what is it? What comes up for you when you're offered a different story, when the invitation is what else is possible here? And you're taking your power back. So how does that feel for you? So I just want, if you're listening, just to tune into that and just stay with us. But Tania, what do you notice for women, like some main things that come up for them that they're looking at, like some themes? Of course, everybody's unique and different. But if you'll share that.
So if we understand menopause has a wonderful, brilliant transition to a rite of passage, actually, to becoming an elder, rather than what society tells us, which is downhill from now on, at a time when you're going to feel terrible and then you're going to go on to chronic disease. That's the main narrative. Fear, fear, fear. But if we come back into our body and we say, okay, if I respect this body and I love this body, what can this transition be telling me? And I think that it is essentially a sensitive time in a woman's life to help her get into the position to age in good health and well-being. And I compare it often to adolescence, pregnancy, postpartum, and then we have the menopausal change time. And in each period of our life cycle, those times are sensitive times for a reason. So, for example, if women have been pregnant, they may remember that if they were living a life that wasn't in balance, very quickly their body started speaking to them. And luckily, most of the time for pregnant women, if you would go and see a doctor and you had symptoms that were making you feel uncomfortable, the doctor wouldn't actually say, oh, it's your crazy hormones. The doctor may actually ask you, well, how much are you working? Are you working too hard? Are you stressed at work? How is your sleep? Are you eating? Are you getting vitamins and minerals, et cetera, et cetera? So there is this idea that pregnancy is a sensitive time. But at other times of change, we don't give women that respect. So women often come literally crashing into midlife, juggling so many things. And for some women, it may be that their diet is totally, rubbish. And they know that. And it's very easy to say, oh, no, it's just my hormones. If you could just give me that medicine, please, then I wouldn't have to look at my diet. And for some women, they know they just don't move enough. And so even women who I've spoken to, they say, I just started walking. And even with that, I felt a little bit better. But the women who I'm working with, they've often cleaned up their diet, gone exercising, trying to be a bit more outdoors, etc. And they're still having symptoms because they have a misunderstanding of their experience and of how they are innocently. And I use that term a lot because it's really important. We don't do it on purpose. We innocently create stress in our lives by not understanding how the system works. So women come with really all kinds of symptoms. And it's amazing that, the female hormone, estrogen, is blamed for, these days, I think it's like 30, 35 symptoms, all of that because of, women's hormones. It's responsible for all of that. But they can have the traditional night sweats, hot flushes, migraines, skin problems. For some women, they have a sensitivity in their stomach. And so they've often had like IBS when they're a teenager or often when they're pregnant, and that flares up again, or other symptoms that they had flaring up maybe in times of change in the past, start flaring up again. There's a lot of anxiety and depression and mood swings in general. And there's all kinds of symptoms. And in different women, it just plays out differently. But when we come into this understanding and realize, oh, it's actually not the circumstances that I'm blaming for anything. Often I hear women say, oh, yeah, I would like to clean up my symptoms and I would like to maybe, listen to you more. But my work is so stressful and I just can't, I just can't. So I just need right now the fix right now.
Yeah.
And okay, that will be her journey. But there's things in our life that we haven't tended to, or as I like to say, it's like undernourished. And this is a really good time to look at those things, because maybe in our 20s and 30s, we could get away with a life a little bit out of balance or a lot out of balance. And for some of us, the body wouldn't talk to us too much, and it would just sort of like let us get on. And one day you'll see what that means. But come our 40s, and for some women, it's even late 30s, come midlife, the body really starts talking to us and saying, oh, no, you're not going to keep on that life of stress or on that crappy diet or on that no movement lifestyle that you have. We're going to shake things up so that you learn to age in good health. Because, there is this idea of, oh, chronic diseases, they increase from midlife on. That's not, that's not an innate part of our design. That's because if we come to midlife and we're not waking up to where good health lies, then, maybe the discomfort moves on to dis-ease. But that's still wisdom coming through the body, trying to wake us up and trying to get us to come back to the path of nature, where really, there lies our innate health.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book, nature wants us healthy, thriving elders. And what a beautiful moment to stop and do that reset, right? Of just like taking inventory and going, oh, all right, yeah, done that. But then the accumulation of all of those things throughout the years, and then nature, meaning however you want to call that, wanting you to thrive as things start to shift and change. And you also mentioned that's the calling of the wise woman, right? In women, like asking them to, all right, it's a new season. It's not, and you mentioned, I love words, and you mentioned the Japanese word, Konenki.
Konenki, yeah.
Konenki. Yes, in Ko, the renewal and regeneration, Ning, the year and the years, and Ki or Chi, right, the season and the energy. And what a beautiful way to represent this transitional period and this new season. I just think it's so beautifully crafted, and what a beautiful symbology of that. And so, how did you go about, even before this period in your life, of this? How did you come about this understanding of the body, that the body was supporting you and there was this communication? So symptoms didn't mean that everything was falling apart, but it was the body saying, hey, maybe that's not working for me, right? And also, how did you come about loosening the grip on the thoughts and the perceptions of, oh yeah, thinking this must be true? I often tell my little one, like, you don't have to believe everything you think, right? Just having that. So I'm curious, in your journey, how did that come about?
Yeah. So just to go back to that Konenki and the way that Japanese understand midlife change, how different is that to the way in the West, right? We don't have any terms that offer some kind of respect for this period of change, that offer us anything to look forward to. And again, it's like the relationship with the body. The whole narrative is midlife, oh no, it's downhill. You're just going to get symptoms. You need to be searching for disease. You need to be checking out, having all these tests and checks, et cetera, et cetera. So it creates this whole experience of midlife change that's so off the path. So in terms of my body, I guess I was just lucky in that I grew up with a respect for the body. And I grew up, my mum used to be much more on the natural side, and we weren't rushing to the doctors all the time. And she was making, food at home and yogurt and bread and all this stuff. So that was sort of within me. And so I didn't really grow up with the idea of there's a symptom, immediately crush it. It was sort of like a more gentler, we've got time, let's let it go through, let's let any symptoms go through the body sense of things. And so that helped me. And then also, as I mentioned in the book, having 3 kids and natural pregnancies, natural birth, and having that experience and then breastfeeding them is such an empowering experience and makes you see the body as miraculous. So that gave me a really good grounding in, there is wonder in the body. So I'm not going to just like have believed that all that time, then come to midlife and go, the wonder just disappeared. I just decided to go away. That just didn't fit with me. And then in terms of what I saw about thought, I guess I'd just been on a journey of trying to understand more about the human experience. And I'd read Eckhart Tolle and Michael Singer and being sort of captured by that idea of the observer and the thoughts. And if we're not our thoughts, then who are we, etc. And so when I came across the 3 principles of innate health, then it just landed very quickly with me and very simply. And then it just all made sense. And then also seeing the body's wisdom through everything that you experience in the body. And that includes feelings. And very often, as I explained at the beginning, we go around thinking, I have a bad feeling, so there's truth in that. And that's actually not true, but you need to play with that idea in order to see that it's not true. So I've actually been running an experiment and seeing, for every time that I feel uptight about something and stressed about something, is it true? Does it turn out to be true? Or is that a made up story that I'm holding on to? And it's never true. Like these made up stories that create stress for us are never true. But when we settle down and, we can I can still have stormy thinking, right? I can still see something, go, this is making me angry. You know, this thing out there, that must be what's making me feel bad, rather than my thinking about whatever is out there. So I can still have that experience, but very quickly, like, I will calm down, and then a different thought will come about. And I'll remember, I know that there's a different experience to be had of everything. And it's just, I don't have to know what that experience is, because it comes by itself. So it's very different from, for example, thinking I need to have positive thought. Because if I say, you know, I need to have the positive thoughts, then I'm having a lot of thinking about having positive thoughts. And so that creates a storm already on a storm. So if I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. This isn't good. I need to think of something else. I need to think of something positive. I need to cheer up. So there's a storm going on here, and I'm creating another storm on top. And that just keeps me in a low mood. It keeps me in insecure thinking. Whereas when I understand the way the system works, it's simple. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go and chase for the thought that I want to put into my head instead of this thought that's bringing me down. No, I just calm down, and I know that naturally the system works in the way that it does. Fresh thinking comes in, and we have a different experience. Yeah. And it all comes from within. It all comes from this innate ability to bounce back from any amount of insecure thinking and low mood. We can just relax, come back into ourselves, come back into the now, feel grounded, whatever we want to do. And the experience starts to change without any circumstances changing. And I know that listeners have had that experience. You know, it can be, for example, if someone's lost a job, you know, so say someone lost a job 5 years ago, and probably at the time, they're like, this is a disaster. You know, what am I going to do? And I'm never going to find another job, etc. And then time goes on, and we realize, oh no, that story was made up. Here I am doing, you know, something that I love much more. And it's always, you know, the stories that we make up, we take seriously. It makes us feel bad, but when we think we need to hang around in that feeling, we don't. We can just lighten up and wait for a different experience to come through.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's so simple and so powerful. You know, just and it's really self-trust, isn't it? It's just trusting, just like we trust that the body knows what it's doing, and to allow that experience to unfold, that we can just trust that, yeah, a different experience will come if we just come back to center, whatever that is for us. And you know, and I just want to also go back to this idea of aging and having all these checkups, right? Because that's what we hear in our society, right? Oh, you're 40. Now you got to get, especially for women, now you got to get this and this and this, you know, and you get your mammograms and your PAPs and, you know, all these things. And then once you're 50, it's colonoscopy, you know, I mean, it's just like this endless story and idea that we're breaking down already, you know, and it's just, I love that we're having this conversation to totally change that story, because of course not. I mean, we have potentially the ability to live for hundreds of years, maybe, you know, if we didn't have these stories, and what else is possible. Liz and I talk about that here all the time. So I want to ask you, Tania, because this is a huge topic when we talk about menopause and perimenopause, well, menopause mostly, and how women are really conditioned to believe that, okay, so like we've been talking about, something's wrong, your hormones are off, we have to give you some replacement, right? The HRT, the hormone replacement therapy. So if we can just kind of delve into that whole, I know there's a lot of different aspects to that, but just lead us through that a little bit. What's going on there?
So it's really useful, I think, to look back at history in the last century and see where those ideas came from. So, you know, the ideas of women's hormones have been around, you know, just over 100 years. And
right.
If you take a misogynistic view of women and you think, oh, she reaches menopause, then what is she useful for? Like, why would she continue to exist? You know, there are still, you know, scientists who think like that, who say, well, what is that about? You know, why would she be around if she's not fertile? So there's this misogynistic view of women. And then they get this idea of, oh yeah, her hormones, her ovaries aren't, producing the amount of hormones they used to be. And that can't be right, because there can't be any other concept of woman apart from woman in reproductive cycles. That's where it comes from. So if we didn't even talk about the woman in terms of hormones, but talked about it in terms of energy, for example, it would be a much more interesting conversation. Yeah. She has this kind of energy at that stage of life, and then there's a different kind of energy of transformation, and there's the energy of an elder, and it's a gain, it's not a loss. But they've created this whole story of loss using the hormone story, because they're like, oh, women surely need hormones to stay as they were when they're in their 30s. No, women don't. Women need to graduate to elders, because that's not only the way that they're designed, but that's what society needs. Society doesn't need us not changing, not gaining any wisdom, staying the same as we were, through our 20s and 30s and not changing. But there came along this idea, then it must be the hormones. And so it came to be, surely women want to be, what they called in the 1960s, because of a very famous book, Feminine Forever, which became this best-selling book written by this American gynecologist. And he, in that book, really popularized the idea of there's this wonder pill, he called it, which back then was just estrogen therapy. And you just take it, and it's going to clear up all your symptoms, and it's going to make sure you don't get any diseases as you age, and it's all going to be wonderful. And he literally made it all up. There was no science whatsoever behind any of it, but it all fit into this idea, this misogynistic idea. And he calls women like menopausal women like castrates and decaying. And so you read it today, and I have a copy of my bookshelf, but you read it today and you're like, oh my God. But that's where it comes from. That's where the idea comes from. The menopausal woman is a decaying woman. She's castrated. We need to make sure she remains this feminine forever, example of woman that we saw her in her 20s or 30s. And so they bring in this idea of the replacement of hormones to fit into, let's keep women unchanged, because that has to be the best way for them. And like I said, they just pulled in all this idea of, it will, reduce your risk of chronic disease and clear up all the symptoms. And then already in the 1970s, right from actually before that time, there were doctors saying that just doesn't sound right. Like, why would we be giving healthy women hormones for over a long time? That doesn't sound like it's going to be a good idea. And then comes to the 1970s, and research comes out that there's a big increase in endometrial cancer, which is a cancer of the lining of the uterus. And so without doing any research, once again, they're like, we just need to add progesterone, and then we will protect the uterus and everything will be fine. Don't worry. So they come out with this combined hormone therapy and say, this is what women need. And again, they don't do any solid research, no large randomized controlled trials. And they're not done until the 1990s. And in the 1990s, trials stopped being done. And in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative is halted because they realized that combined hormone therapy is increasing the risk of all kinds of conditions and diseases. And that sent the industry into shock. And then what we see over the last 20 years is sort of like the pharmaceutical companies sort of gathering together again and trying to come out with a new idea and a new idea and a new idea. But it's all, again, based on this idea of the woman is decaying, give her hormones to replace it. And there is no sense of, could it be that as a society, we don't value this period of transformation? We don't nourish women, give them what they need. When women are running to try and have it all, as it were, perhaps that isn't suitable for them. And so today, for example, we have all these, I'm talking about the situation, particularly in the UK, we have like celebrities coming out and going, I was in this big media career and then I got all these symptoms and I thought I was falling apart and I thought I was getting Alzheimer's and I thought, And then I got HRT and it's so amazing and it saved me. And there's no discussion whatsoever about, well, what was going on in your career? Like, was that suitable for this time of change when we really need to go within, slow down, listen to what our body needs, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying, oh, that means come to midlife, leave your big careers. No, but I'm saying, is it that the woman's body malfunctions, or is it because as a society we're malfunctioning and we're not holding space for women's life cycles? And so rather than, getting on this bandwagon, HRT, that's what a woman needs. What does a woman need? She needs good health. And it's just not rocket science. We don't need to go into that, what the computer says your hormone levels are at this time and this day, et cetera, et cetera. No, there's a nature's path, there's a design, and we're designed to go through menopause. And we're not supposed to come out of menopause feeling actually the same as when we went in. We're supposed to come out as a wiser woman, as I see it. So you give women these hormones, and all you're actually doing is tricking the body into the body believing, oh, we're not at a sensitive time, so I'm not going to, create a little awakening period for the woman. No, we're just in this time of no change right now. And it's just symptom suppression. Yeah. And actually for a lot of women, they come off hormone therapy after what now is now being challenged again, but was until recently considered, a maximum time of 7 years. And a lot of them get their symptoms back because then all they've done is delayed what their body wants them, to wake up to. So they've delayed that sort of awakening process. But, it's all about symptom suppression. And that fits in very well with, a lot of ways that we treat conditions and symptoms, etc. We don't look at lifestyle. We just say, okay, take this medicine and suppress the symptoms, and just go on, carry on as if nothing in your life could possibly be out of balance.
Yeah. I have so much to say. I'm trying to gather over just the trauma that just that concept alone, and how damaging, right, that concept can be for a whole society of you're decaying. It's like a thing that's just ugh. And then we hide our elders in Western society. We don't see elders, right? They're not enmeshed in living. We've isolated the families. There's so much to talk about in so many ways. And then to be faced again with this war mentality. It's anti this, it's anti that. We cannot allow for the natural process to take place, which is the evocation of the natural of the divine intelligence. And then our emotional growth gets stunted. So we have women who want to be young forever and don't mature into that wise elder, right? And then it stunts the whole growth of everyone because we're all together and we're all enmeshed. And so with the intent to just really make this moment one of a conditioning breaking, of a moment where we rip the shackles off all of these ideas that have been so ingrained in us. And a lot of people have never thought, wait a minute, what does that mean? And then again, to be faced with this pharmaceutical grip on every level of our society that gets to dictate this model of suppressing nature rather than supporting nature. So this is just a moment of recognition that here and now we're breaking the shackles and we're letting those things go. And we are opening ourselves up that maybe this new chocolate cake that just appeared in front of us the like thing that we could actually eat right now. Yeah. Ooh, so much to say. I am so glad that you wrote this book. And I want to tell our listeners that I fully endorse this book. It's simple, concise, straightforward. It's not filled with fluff, which I really appreciate. How many times I've read something where I'm just like, oh my God, just get to the point. Like, there is a time for story, for a something, and just to kind of amplify the vision or the concept. But this book is so well written. Tania's book is beautiful. The way she laid it out is it's so beautiful. And I want to tell our listeners the chapters. It's creation, departure. She's calling you trust, promise, sovereignty, and love. And going from that creation to love, which is the way back and forth, right? Which is where everything originates and comes from and goes to die, and just this deep, deep trust that we do have everything that we need. And you laid it out. It's just so beautiful. About the book is the space in between things. There's space. There's actually open blank pages. And if anyone has gone to my Instagram, I do like white posts where I just say, just pause and take a breath, right? Just peace, just be still. And it was so beautiful to see that in a book. I really appreciated that space to just take another breath and let that sip in, right? So your book is beautifully crafted, and so glad that you reached out and you infused us with this remembrance. And I really hope that our listeners, I've already actually sent your website to some women in my life. I said, we're interviewing her soon. It's not out yet, but just start to get into this different frequency, just start tuning into a different radio station of what's possible. And again, with that mind thing that you said, right? There's always a different experience available. It's a choice. So, this war mentality that there's something that you need to fight for, or that's fighting inside of you, and all of that. And we're just really letting those stories go, really coming forth with a new understanding of ourselves as nature, of nature itself. And I'm so glad that we're here broadcasting this. I had to say all of this because everything that you were speaking. How do I put all of this into words? What do I talk about first? So there's no question there. Maybe Tarah has a question. Maybe you have.
Can I just come back on that? Because I love that you've picked up on a few things in the book. First of all, the chapter titles, because for many women, they want a book on menopause. It's like, well, how do I deal with the night sweats? And what about what about the mood swings? And what about this? And can you give me tools to do that? And luckily, we don't need to approach our symptoms in that way, because the symptoms are not detached from innate intelligence. And so I'm able to offer these themes that you read in terms of the chapter titles, because it makes so much more sense when we understand the body as an intelligent wonder, this miraculous divine part of existence. And it's, we don't need to cut it up into parts. We don't need to attack it, like you said, in the war mentality. And I'm so happy that you picked up on the space, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to give women space to think about our experiences through midlife change differently. Because when we're in the war mentality, it's like, oh, I've got these symptoms. I need to go to the doctor. What does the computer say about my hormones? Where is my prescription? Oh, that doctor's not going to give it to me. I'm going to go to another doctor, and it's just like, that's how menopause looks, unfortunately, for so many women. And there is a different experience to be had, and it's nature calling us into this different experience. It's calling us to give ourselves space, to slow down, to take a look at our lives, at where we can, make really simple changes and have huge leaps in sort of the sense of our well-being. So thank you for picking up on that. Yeah. So pleased it went through.
Yes. I get this vision, the status quo of menopause, well, and so many things in life, of, those like murder boards where it's just like this thread to here, and it's all like chaotic, and you're like, what am I looking at? What's going on? It's so complex, and we've been conditioned to believe that it has to be complex in order for it to work, right? There has to be all these different pieces and parts in order for us to somehow find the answer in that chaos. But what we're doing here, and what Tania does so beautifully in her book, and is just erase the whole thing, just get rid of all of it. And it's a blank space. And then we can have if we want these beautiful sayings, I think it's upside down, but this one just says, the sun cannot be touched by the weather. And it's just a beautiful little drawing of the sun. And that's leading us into, I think it's the chapter, She's Calling. Mm-hmm. She's calling. Who's calling? You.
Yeah.
So just back to that simplicity, and it's so beautiful. I love this conversation. And Tania, I want to end with, what do you see? What are you most excited about in these times as we know we're shifting into, or we're already in the new, right? That's what we're all here doing and co-creating as we have this conversation. So what most excites you about that? And I also want to know what you were doing in the 11th, if you want to share.
Well, let's start with the 11th. I was teaching English, actually. I finished a degree in the UK, and then I have French in my lineage. I'm half Moroccan, so I really wanted to improve my French, and so I went over to Paris and hung out there.
Nice.
And got my French really good, but now I've forgotten.
Yes, I know.
And so let's not speak in French. Exchange some experiences.
Come on.
So after the 11th, what was your other question? Oh, what am I most excited about? Yes. I see that we're already, creating an amazing new sense of health and well-being and community, and this whole vision of what a woman's body is, as opposed to the medical version of a woman's body, is just going to blossom more and more, and we're just going to tear down all these old misogynistic ideas about the malfunctioning female body that needs to be suppressed and controlled, rather than women learning to listen for this wisdom. And just as we've seen in the whole system, as the system is indeed collapsing, there are these last attempts coming out. We spoke before a little bit about in the UK, that they're really going back to the 1960s, and I think it's coming to North America too. Trying to get back. They're like, oh, here's an opportunity. Let's get all women onto hormones. But there'll be more women awake to something else. Awake to, wait a minute, that just doesn't make sense. Like that. Why would my body just start malfunctioning, in my 40s? And as more people have a more holistic understanding of health, have a more respect and loving relationship with their body, and a new idea of symptoms that's actually, grounded in an old idea of symptoms, but an idea that we don't need to wage war on symptoms. We don't need to live a life in this idea of suppressing symptoms all the time, but we can listen in and learn from our bodies and let them guide us forward. And it's not only, menopause is no different in that way from the way that we can view health. So as more people really gather this wisdom of, again, a holistic understanding of health, I really hope that that's going to help more women go through midlife change in a very different way and embrace that time for what it is, which is a really transformative and empowering time that's designed to change us, because that's where we're going to be able to help humanity as we come through as wiser elders. So, yeah.
It is done.
Amen.
And where can we find you, real quick?
Yeah,
Tania.
Yeah, the easiest way is on my website, thewiserwoman.com. And just so everyone knows, that's not me. It's the wiser woman is in every single woman. And when we come to midlife, she really comes to the surface and wants to be found. She wants to be heard. And so it's about this journey for all of us, moving through change, listening and finding the wiser woman within. So my website, thewiserwoman.com. You can also look me up on Facebook or Twitter. under my name, Tania Elfersy. So, yes.
Beautiful.
Thank
I just to round that up really quickly with, I don't know if any of you ladies have heard, and we won't go into it, but just as a note for our men listening, that now there is testosterone replacement therapy, TRT. And so the invitation is for you to also consider all of that we spoke about in relation to that. So, yes, the choice is always yours. The unfolding of those choices are yours. And if you want to tune into the frequency of how do I support myself? How do I support what's coming through and trusting what's coming through? It's always available to you. Thank you, Tania, for being here.
Thank you, Tania.
Great.